Hello and welcome to The Right Mama with Jennifer Aline, a creative space where we talk about the writing process, the publishing industry, and motherhood chaos. Since it is nearing the very end of the decade, I thought that I would do a two-part series just kind of talking about how this past decade went and then how I hope the next decade goes. So today's video is kind of going to be a little venture into the past 10 years, and we are going to discuss my writing process over the last 10 years, what I did, how it went, what I learned, things like that. And then part 2 of this video is going to talk about what I hope the next 10 years may bring, or kind of some things I'm looking forward to when it comes to 2020 and beyond. So let's get started. I will say one thing that if you hear Frozen in the background, it's because my girls are downstairs with their dad watching Frozen for the bazillionth time this week. So hopefully they don't run in on me again. Let's start off in 2010. In 2010, I had just transferred from community college to a university, and I was in school, but I was writing. I've always been writing, as you know, and I was writing at this time my second novel. And the funny thing about this novel, which was a young adult book, was that at the time I was writing it, my roommate was reading it. And it does make me laugh when I think about how this all worked and how it went, because I would give her some chapters, and then after a while she was right up to where I was writing, and she would start asking for more. She wanted to read more. She would tell me things that sounded a little funny, things that she loved. But I think the coolest part about this process when I was writing this specific book back in 2010 was that she wanted to read more, and that she was very into it, and that I would be writing and I'd hear her gasping from the bed in the corner, or I'd laugh at the desk and she'd say, "What did you do?" So it was really cool to kind of have her as that kind of makeshift beta reader when I was in college. So we'll jump ahead to 2012. I graduated college in 2012, and I'd finished Noon. So I talked to one of my old professors who was in the communications and journalism field, and asked him what my next step should be. I had queried agents. I really wanted to move forward and be serious with my writing. It's something I'd always wanted. And I asked him kind of what a good idea for the next step was. I wasn't getting a ton of positive feedback from agents. I did get a couple full manuscript requests, and one that wanted me to totally switch my point of view, which I did, and then they still rejected me, and that's a lot of work. So I talked to this professor, and at the time, ebooks were really big. It was kind of the big launch of Nooks and Kindles. So he said, "Why don't you self-publish on Nook and Kindle?" And at the time, I really just wanted to get my story out there. I wanted to share it with friends and family. Yes, I wanted to make a few bucks on it, but I really just wanted to get my book out there so people could kind of realize that I was serious about this. So I took his suggestion, and I decided later in 2012 to publish Noon. I will do a whole other video sometime on what I learned during this process and kind of why recently I took it off the shelves. I did have my stepsister edit it. She's a writing major. She has a writing degree. But I didn't get beta readers. I didn't get critique partners. I didn't get a professional editor. I didn't get a professional cover designer. I did it all the easy, simple way, just through, at the time, KDP. So I will go into that process later. Anyway, I got that self-published in 2012, didn't do a crazy launch party, didn't really market it too much through any social media platforms. Things I've learned I should have done, but I got it out there. So that was really exciting. Into 2013, I started working full-time job. I had an apartment. My job allowed it so I could go to schools and talk to health classes about my book, which was really great because there were a lot of health topics inside the book. So I would talk to health classes. I went to some colleges and talked to colleges. My book was in a bunch of the libraries. It was doing really well. I was really excited because I really wasn't working that hard to market it, and there were so many other things I could have done to market it. So that was really exciting going into 2012, 2013 time. At the same time, I was blogging for a couple websites, healthyplace.com. I was writing about some mental health things on there. I was honestly just living the independent adult life in my apartment with my dog and kind of marketing that young adult book as often as I could. And of course, writing other things. I have learned over the years that I'm always writing something. I will start and stop books. And I don't recommend doing that. I say you should follow through with everything you start, but realistically, it doesn't happen for all of us. So 2012, 2013 was really kind of the beginning of me being seen as an author. And one of my cousins actually called me on the phone after she started reading my book and said, "Is this what you've always been doing, when you were a kid and you used to sit on the side of the field while we played dodgeball and draw and write in your journal? Because it's really good," she said. So that was probably one of my favorite memories with my family starting to read my books, was that they started taking me seriously. They're like, "You're actually okay." And that was good to hear. So 2015 rolls around, and since I had been kind of in the adult world for a year-ish, or 2 years at this point, I started getting more interested in women's fiction. This is when my genre interest kind of switched over. I was smack in the middle of friends getting married, friends having kids, us living on our own, paying bills, doing all those lovely adulthood things that are fun but crazy all at the same time. So the reality kind of inspired me to start writing a women's fiction book. This was my first women's fiction book, and I finished it. I always say it's kind of like having a baby. It takes about 9-ish months of just serious writing for me to finish a book. I edit as I go, so it does take me a little while. So from 2015 to the beginning of 2016, I finished my first women's fiction book. And from there, I did some edits myself. I went through it. I did start the querying process. Again, I didn't get beta readers. I didn't get critique partners like I should have, because I really didn't know much about that yet. So it's 2016, and I decide to go to Writer's Digest. I want to go to the conference. I had gone to Book Expo America in 2007. I didn't mention that in 2015, I did go to Unicorn Writers Conference, which is a very small conference, kind of right outside of New York City. I did go to that. It was really great, really fun. Actually, my young adult novel was being sold there, which was cool. But I decide in kind of the spring of 2016 to put the money forth to go to the Writer's Digest annual conference and pitch slam. So I decide to really edit this book, make it cleaner, take some of those extra words out, work on some of the content, things like that. And I did send to a few agents. I did send some query letters before the conference, and I got good feedback, but I didn't go crazy with that yet. I wanted to do the pitch slam. Writers' conferences are amazing experiences, especially Writer's Digest. And I met some great people there. I did my first pitch slam, and it was amazing. It really is like speed dating for agents. I learned so much about the industry, so much about the professionals, about beta readers and critique partners and the editing process and what you really should do if you want to be a serious writer. So that was a great experience in that I got terrific feedback from the pitch slam. Of course, nobody ended up wanting the women's fiction novel. However, I still liked the story. What I decided about a year-ish later was to keep one of those characters, change the other two characters a little bit, and start writing a new story. That kind of brings me to, 2017. Things took a little break in 2017. Why? Because I got pregnant. I had my twin girls November in 2017. And that year was just a crazy year. I did not write a lot that year. I started off, wanting to switch around that women's fiction book. I didn't really get to focus on that probably until 2018 sometime. I was very uncomfortable. I was in the middle of, so much personal chaos going on top of being pregnant unexpectedly. My boyfriend, who I hadn't been with very long, after I told him that I was pregnant, ended up having to go to a training in another state for months of my pregnancy. On top of that, I was put on disability from work, so I had to move out of my apartment. I moved back in with my mom for a few months. And during those few months, I started freelance writing because I was put on disability. I couldn't work anymore full time because my back was horrible. Um, so from there, I started freelance writing. I got involved with a little company I still kind of write with on occasion, like maybe a couple every other month, sometimes a few times a month, depending on their schedule. And I wrote for the New York Post, New York Daily News, Yahoo News. I really enjoyed writing for them. I started reaching out, doing some other writing, and that's kind of what I was doing, and that was the start of my freelance career. So, November 2017, I move in with my boyfriend. Totally new city, don't know anybody. I'm not working full time anymore. I left my job, so it was a huge change, a huge transition, and we have our girls in 2017. So a lot of my writing, I did a lot of writing at my mom's, but I did more reading, which was really nice. I got to kind of jump into a different world and read a few books, which was nice because I don't get that much time anymore, and I wish I did. So I read a bunch. I wrote here and there, but I really freelanced a lot. I tried to get a few dollars while I could. So fast forward 2018, and I decide that I'm going to try to write again. And I still wanted to focus on that one character from my women's fiction novel, and I decided to switch around the two other characters and bring in some other aspects into the story, some other dynamics of adulthood and when you jump into adulthood. So I started writing that. And by the end of 2018, I decided to really get serious about this book. I really liked it. And early 2019, I signed up for Writer's Digest and the Pitch Slam. So I kind of told myself at this point, I need to finish this book I gave myself a deadline. I think it was like June. I said, by June, this book has to be done. The first draft has to be done. So I can really pitch it in August at the conference. So I was rushing a little, and I don't like rushing, but it ended up okay. So I finished the book. I do a few personal edits on my own. I research the agents that are going to be at the Pitch Slam. I go to the conference. The 2019 conference was amazing. I really wanted to take full advantage of the experience. In 2016, I did, but I didn't really interact with the community as much as I should have. I should have connected more with professionals, connected with other writers, have created more of a network. So I really wanted to work on that. I became very involved with our little Facebook group that was, we're all in a Facebook group for the conference, those especially who were doing the pitch slam. So a lot of us would meet, practice our pitches, things like that. I really made sure to reach out to authors who are on social media platforms who are speaking. I also, if there were any editors in the field, I made sure to thank them on Twitter, things like that. I really wanted to get more involved. I did the pitch slam and I did really well, unexpectedly well. I thought because 2016 I did well, I was like, 2019 isn't going to go as great. I also started my pitch similar to 2016 because that one character was still in it. But it went really well. I also really enjoyed meeting some people there. I reached out during the cocktail hour, met this group of writers, and I'm still somewhat in touch with some of them. So that was really cool. And so I get home, I do some edits, and I send out what was requested from the pitch slam. Around that time was the September hashtag #PitMad on Twitter. So as I've talked about before in my PitMad video, which I can put below, I do PitMad. I've done it every few months. That's one thing I've done for the past decade, is pretty much always been involved in PitMad. And this one goes really well. I get some interest, so I send off the requests from the PitMad on Twitter. And if you don't know what PitMad is, it is a little pitch contest that Twitter hosts every 3 months for industry professionals, editors, agents to look at what you post about your story. And if they like it with the heart, you send what they request. So that's what I did. And then, end of October 2019, one of those small presses that liked my PitMad post, one of them, sent me an offer for a contract. And that's what kind of brings me, honestly, back to where I am now. I weighed the pros and cons. It wasn't an agent. I had always wanted an agent. But it was an offer from a small press and an editor who wanted my story. And I decided after those, researching and weighing the pros and cons, that I was going to do it. I'm going to make it happen, and work with this team. So that kind of brings us to where we are now. And my first round of content edits are starting the end of this month. And we are hoping that the book will be out end of 2020. That's kind of our goal. And it's nice when you have a small press because you can do that. It's not going to take years for this book to be worked on. It's a smaller team, a smaller group of authors, and they're able to be have a more personal relationship with you, which is kind of cool. One of the pros. So that's where I am right now. And this past decade taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about the writing industry, about my writing interests. They did switch. They switched once I kind of did join adulthood and I moved into my own apartment, started working full time and having friends popping out kids and getting married and, going out for drinks and just all those kind of things. I really learned a lot and wanted to switch over to the women's fiction realm. And I still love the young adult realm, and I'm pretty sure I'll still write young adult. So that's where I am. And I've learned that mentally and emotionally, the past decade has been crazy. I've had so many ups and downs. Being someone who struggles with mental health, it's been a lot. But I realized, I can push through. A few years before 2010, I dealt with some other crazy stuff. And if I can deal with that stuff, and if I can deal with what I dealt with this year, or if I can deal with what I dealt with over this past decade, I can do anything. And really, this 2020 is ending on a really positive note. And I'm looking forward to the next 10 years to see what happens. But we will talk about the next 10 years and the goals for the next decade in the next video. But I appreciate you guys listening and going through this little timeline, with me. So if you like this kind of just chatty content, let me know and put the thumbs up down below and leave a comment if you want anything else that's kind of just a conversation. But subscribe, ding, 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 ring the bell, and you'll get reminders. I post every Friday. And stay creative and drink that coffee.